Maya sat on the cold stone steps of her family home, watching the village women carry water from the well. Their children ran alongside them, laughing and playing in the dust. She pressed her hand against her flat stomach and felt the familiar ache of emptiness that had haunted her for 3 years of marriage. The women noticed her sitting there and quickly looked away. Some whispered to each other behind their hands. Maya knew what they were saying, the same words that followed her everywhere like shadows. Barren, cursed, useless. Her mother-in-law Kamala emerged from the house, her face twisted with disgust. Still sitting here like a statue? There's work to be done. The least you can do is make yourself useful since you can't give us children. Maya stood slowly, her joints stiff from sitting in the same position for hours. She had learned not to argue back. Words only made things worse. Inside the small mud house, her husband Ravi sat counting money with his father. They stopped talking when she entered, but she caught enough words to understand. They were discussing her again, always discussing her like she was a broken piece of furniture they needed to replace. The healer in the next village wants to examine her, Kamala announced, stirring a pot of dough with violent motions. He says he can tell for certain if she's truly barren or if there's still hope. Maya's heart clenched. Another healer, another examination, another disappointment. She had been poked, prodded, given bitter herbs, and subjected to painful rituals. Nothing worked. Nothing changed. That evening, as she served dinner to the men, her father-in-law spoke without looking at her. If the healer confirms what we already know, we'll have to make difficult decisions. Ravi needs sons to carry on her name. Ravi shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. He never defended her anymore. In the beginning, during their first year of marriage, he had been kind. He told her they had time, that children would come. But, as months passed without pregnancy, his kindness faded like colors in the harsh sun. Maya retreated to the small corner of the house where she slept. She pulled out a worn photograph of her parents, both dead from fever 2 years ago. They had arranged her marriage before dying, believing they were securing her future. Instead, they had trapped her in a life of shame and disappointment. The next morning, Kamala shook her awake before dawn. Get ready. We're going to the healer. The journey to the neighboring village took 2 hours by bullock cart. Maya sat silently beside Kamala, who spent the entire trip listing her failures as a wife and daughter-in-law. The morning sun grew stronger, making Maya feel dizzy and nauseous. The healer was an old man with yellowed teeth and hands that smelled of strange herbs. He lived in a hut filled with dried plants, animal bones, and clay pots containing mysterious substances. He examined Maya roughly, while Kamala watched with eager eyes, hoping for a miracle. There is nothing wrong with her body, the healer announced finally. But sometimes the gods decide a woman should not bear children. This is her fate. Kamala's face fell. Is there nothing that can be done? No medicine? No ritual? The old man shook his head. Some women are born to be mothers. Others are not. This one will never give you grandchildren. The ride home felt endless. Kamala's silence was more terrifying than her usual complaints. Maya knew this verdict would seal her fate. She was now officially branded as barren, a label that would follow her forever. That night, she overheard Ravi talking to his parents in hushed tones. They were discussing divorce, remarriage, and what to do with her afterward. Her own family was gone. She had no brothers or uncles to take her in. A divorced, childless woman had few options in their society. Days passed in a strange, suspended state. The family treated her like a ghost, speaking around her, but never to her. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Even the street dogs seemed to sense her changed status and no longer approached for scraps. 2 weeks later, everything changed. Maya was at the market buying vegetables when she heard shouting. A crowd had gathered near the tea stall where men typically discussed village politics and gossip. She moved closer, staying in the shadows. It's decided then, someone was saying. Her husband wants to remarry. The family needs to get rid of her first. Who would take a barren woman? Another voice asked. There's a man from the city. He's looking for a wife, but doesn't care about children. He's willing to pay. Maya's blood turned to ice. They were talking about selling her. Actually selling her like cattle to a stranger who would pay for a childless wife. She dropped her basket of vegetables and ran home, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. When she arrived, she found Kamala and her father-in-law deep in conversation with a man she didn't recognize. The stranger was middle-aged with kind eyes and simple clothes. He looked up when she entered, studying her face with gentle curiosity rather than judgment. "This is her," Kamala said, her voice businesslike. "Maya. She's 25, knows how to cook and clean, and well, she won't burden you with children you don't want." The man nodded slowly. "I see. And she agrees to this arrangement?" "She has no choice," Ravi's father replied bluntly. "We've been generous enough to house her after the healer's pronouncement. It's time for her to find a new life." Maya wanted to speak, to ask who this man was and what kind of life he was offering. But her voice seemed frozen in her throat. The stranger looked at her directly. "What is your name?" It was such a simple question, but no one had asked her name in weeks. Everyone just called her she or that woman. "Maya," she whispered. "I'm Arjun," he said with a slight smile. "I live in the city. I work as a teacher at a small school. I lost my wife 2 years ago, and I'm looking for a companion, not a mother for children I don't have." Kamala jumped in quickly. "She's very hardworking. She won't cause you any trouble." Arjun held up his hand. "I'd like to speak with Maya privately, if that's acceptable." The family exchanged glances. This wasn't how these arrangements usually worked. Typically, the men negotiated while the woman waited silently. But something about Arjun's calm authority made them step back. He gestured toward the door. "Would you walk with me?" Outside, away from listening ears, Arjun spoke gently. "I know this situation isn't your choice. I understand you're being pressured into marriage because you can't have children." Maya nodded, unable to trust her voice. "I want you to know something," he continued. "I don't need you to be anything other than yourself. I'm not looking for a servant or someone to bear my children. I'm looking for a partner, a friend, someone to share life with." These words were so different from anything she'd heard in 3 years of marriage that Maya felt tears welling up. "Why?" she managed to ask. "Why would you want a woman like me?" Arjun stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Because from what I can see, you're a person who has been judged for something beyond your control. I've learned that the heart matters more than anything else. And I can see in your eyes that you have a good heart." Maya stared at him in amazement. No one had spoken to her about her heart in years. Everything had been about her womb, her failure as a woman, her inability to fulfill her supposed purpose. "If you agree to this marriage," Arjun said, "you'll come with me to the city. You'll have your own space, your own choices. I won't force anything on you. We can build whatever kind of life feels right for both of us." It sounded too good to be true. Maya had learned to be suspicious of kindness, especially from men. But something in Arjun's eyes seemed genuine. What if I'm not what you expect?" she asked. "What if you're exactly what I need?" he replied. "Someone real, someone who understands loss and judgment. Someone who knows life isn't always fair, but chooses to keep living anyway." That evening, the families finalized the arrangements. Maya would marry Arjun in a simple ceremony the following week. There would be no celebration, no joy, just a transfer from one household to another. But for the first time in months, Maya felt a tiny spark of hope flickering in her chest. Maybe this stranger with kind eyes was offering her something her first marriage had never provided: the chance to be valued for who she was rather than what her body could or couldn't do. As she lay on her mat that night, listening to her husband and in-laws plan her departure, Maya allowed herself to imagine a different kind of life. A life where her worth wasn't measured by her fertility. A life where someone might care about her thoughts, her dreams, her heart. The week passed quickly. Ravi barely spoke to her during their last days together. There was no sadness in their goodbye, just relief on his part and numbness on hers. Their marriage had become a business arrangement that had failed to produce the desired outcome. On the day of her departure, Maya packed her few belongings in a small cloth bundle. She owned almost nothing: a few old saris, some jewelry her parents had given her, and the photograph of her family. Kamala watched her pack with satisfaction. "Remember," she said, "this man is giving you a second chance. Don't waste it with your negative thoughts and bad luck." Maya didn't respond. She had learned that silence was safer than words. When Arjun arrived to collect her, he brought a simple flower garland and a new sari. Not expensive, but clean and pretty. He placed the garland around her neck with respect, not ownership. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. Maya looked around the house that had been her prison for 3 years. She thought of the dreams she'd had as a young bride, the hopes that had slowly died under the weight of expectation and disappointment. "Yes," she said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. As they walked away from the house, Maya didn't look back. Behind her lay a life of shame and judgment. Ahead, with this stranger who spoke of hearts and choices, lay uncertainty. But uncertainty felt like freedom compared to the certainty of continued misery. The bullock cart that would take them to the bus station waited at the edge of the village. As they climbed aboard, Arjun handed her a small wrapped package. "What is this?" she asked. "A book," he replied. "I noticed you looking at the writing on the tea shop signs. Do you know how to read?" "A little," Maya admitted. "My father taught me some letters before he died. This book has simple stories. I thought you might enjoy it during our journey." Maya unwrapped the package with trembling fingers. It was a thin book with colorful pictures and large, clear letters. No one had ever given her a book before. Books were for important people, educated people, not for failed wives being sold to strangers. "Thank you," she whispered, as their cart bumped along the dusty road toward her new life. Maya held the book against her chest and felt something she had almost forgotten how to feel. Possibility. The city overwhelmed Maya's senses. The noise, the crowds, the tall buildings, the vehicles honking constantly. Everything was foreign and frightening. She pressed closer to Arjun as they made their way through the busy streets, clutching her small bundle of belongings. "It's different from village life," Arjun said, noticing her wide eyes and nervous expression. "But you'll get used to it. The noise becomes background music after a while." Maya nodded, though she couldn't imagine ever feeling comfortable in this chaos. In her village, she knew every face, every house, every tree. Here, strangers rushed past without acknowledging each other, focused on their own urgent business. Arjun's home was a small two-room apartment on the second floor of an old building. It was simple but clean, with white walls, a few pieces of furniture, and books scattered everywhere. Maya had never seen so many books in one place. "This will be your room," Arjun said, opening the door to a space with a single bed, a wooden chest, and a small window that looked out onto the street. "You can arrange it however you like." Maya stared at him in confusion. "My room? But I'm your wife now. Shouldn't I?" "You're my wife in name," he said gently. "But I meant what I said about not forcing anything. You need time to heal, to discover who you are outside of other people's expectations. This room is yours alone until you decide otherwise." That first night, Maya lay awake on the narrow bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of city life. Cars, voices, music from nearby apartments. It never seemed to stop. She thought about Ravi, probably already meeting potential second wives. She thought about Kamala, finally free of the burden of housing a barren daughter-in-law. But mostly, she thought about Arjun's words. "Until you decide otherwise." When had anyone ever given her a choice about anything? The next morning, Arjun knocked softly on her door. "Maya, I'm making tea. Would you like some?" She emerged to find him in the small kitchen, moving efficiently around the space. He had already prepared simple breakfast foods, flatbread, vegetables, pickles. "I usually eat before going to school," he explained. "But you don't need to wake up this early. You can rest, explore the neighborhood, do whatever feels right." Maya sat at the small table, still adjusting to the idea that she could choose her own schedule. In her previous marriage, every moment had been planned by others, every task assigned by Kamala. "What kind of school do you teach at?" she asked, surprising herself with the question. Arjun smiled. "It's a small school for children whose families can't afford the expensive private schools. Many of my students are from villages like yours, families who came to the city looking for better opportunities." "Do you like teaching?" "Very much. Children have such curious minds. They ask questions that adults have stopped asking. They see possibilities where adults see only problems." As Arjun prepared to leave for work, he paused at the door. "Maya, there's a woman named Priya who lives downstairs. She's kind and knows the neighborhood well. If you need anything or want someone to talk to, she'd be happy to help." After he left, Maya stood at the window watching the street come alive. Vendors set up their stalls, children walked to school in uniform groups, women hurried to market with cloth bags. Everyone seemed to have a purpose, a place to go. Maya felt lost in the middle of it all. Around midday, there was a gentle knock at the door. Maya hesitated, then opened it to find a woman about her own age with a warm smile and paint-stained fingers. "You must be Maya," the woman said. "I'm Priya. Arjun told me you might like some company." Priya's apartment was filled with color. Paintings covered the walls, bright fabrics draped the furniture, and ceramic pots held flowering plants. "Did you make all these?" Maya asked, staring at the artwork. "Most of them. I paint, and sell my work at the local market. It's not much money, but it makes me happy. Maya had never met a woman who made money from something that made her happy. In her experience, women work to serve their family's needs, not their own desires. Have you always been an artist? She asked. Priya laughed. No, I used to be married to a man who thought painting was a waste of time. He wanted me to focus on having children and keeping house. When I couldn't give him children, he divorced me. Maya's breath caught. You're like me? Barren? Yes. Priya said the word without shame, without the whispered tone Maya was used to hearing. But I learned something important after my divorce. Being unable to have children doesn't make us incomplete. It just makes us different. For the first time in years, Maya was talking to someone who truly understood her situation. Someone who had faced the same judgment, the same rejection, the same sense of failure. How do you bear it? Maya asked. The shame, the way people look at us. I stopped caring what they think, Priya said simply. I realized that people who judge us for something we can't control aren't worth my time or energy. I focus on the people who see my value beyond my womb. Maya spent the afternoon with Priya, learning about her life, her art, her journey from shame to self-acceptance. When she returned to Arjun's apartment, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: sisterhood. That evening, when Arjun came home, Maya was sitting at the table reading the book he'd given her. She looked up as he entered, and, for the first time, she smiled at him genuinely. How was your day? She asked. Good. How was yours? Did you meet Priya? Yes. She's wonderful. Thank you for introducing us. Over dinner, Maya found herself talking more than she had in months. She asked about his students, his work, his life before she arrived. Arjun answered patiently, encouraging her questions with gentle attention. Maya, he said as they finished eating, can I ask you something? She tensed, expecting questions about her past, her failures, her medical history. What did you enjoy doing before you were married? What brought you happiness? The question surprised her. I liked helping my father with his accounts. He had a small shop, and I was good with numbers. And I enjoyed listening to the radio stories in the evenings. You're good with mathematics? I think so. But women don't usually what? Use their minds? That's nonsense. Arjun's voice was firm but not angry. Intelligence isn't determined by gender any more than worth is determined by fertility. That night, Maya lay in bed thinking about Arjun's words and Priya's example. Two people in one day had treated her as if she had value beyond her ability to bear children. It felt strange, almost dangerous, to hope that this treatment might continue. The days began to form a gentle routine. Arjun left for school each morning after sharing breakfast with Maya. She would spend time with Priya, exploring the neighborhood, reading books from Arjun's collection. In the evenings, she and Arjun would eat together and talk about their days. Gradually, Maya began to feel less like a charity case and more like a person with her own thoughts and interests. Arjun never pressured her to be anything other than herself. He didn't expect her to serve him like a traditional wife, nor did he treat her like a burden he'd agreed to carry. One evening, about a month after her arrival, Arjun came home with excitement in his eyes. Maya, I have an idea. The school needs someone to help with record keeping and student accounts. The pay isn't much, but you said you enjoyed working with numbers. Maya's heart jumped. You think I could do such work? I think you could do anything you set your mind to. Would you like to visit the school tomorrow and see if it interests you? That night, Maya lay awake not from anxiety, but from anticipation. The possibility of useful work, of contributing something meaningful, made her feel more alive than she had in years. The school was smaller than Maya had imagined, housed in a converted building with bright, cheerful classrooms. Children's artwork covered the walls, and the sound of learning filled the air: recitation, questions, laughter. The principal, Mrs. Sharma, was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a direct manner. She interviewed Maya briefly, testing her mathematics and writing skills. Your calculations are accurate, and your handwriting is clear, she said approvingly. Can you start next week? Maya could barely contain her excitement as they walked home. She wants me to start next week. I'll be earning my own money, helping with important work. Arjun smiled at her enthusiasm. I'm happy for you. You deserve to use your abilities. Arjun, Maya said, stopping suddenly in the middle of the street. Why are you being so kind to me? I don't understand what you gain from this arrangement. He considered her question seriously. My first wife, Sunita, died in childbirth. The baby died too. For a long time, I blamed myself, wondered if I'd pushed too hard for children, if I had valued the wrong things. Maya's heart ached for his loss. I learned that love isn't about what someone can give you or do for you. It's about seeing their true self and valuing that person for who they are. When I met you, I saw someone who had been reduced to a single biological function. I wanted to offer you the chance to be whole again. But what if I can never love you the way a wife should? What if we discover a different kind of love? What if friendship and respect and mutual care turn into something beautiful that doesn't look like anyone else's marriage? That evening, for the first time since arriving in the city, Maya wrote a letter. She wrote to the memory of her parents, telling them about her new life, her work, her growing friendship with Arjun. She wrote about discovering that her worth wasn't tied to her womb, that she could be valued for her mind and heart. She also wrote about fear that this happiness was temporary, that Arjun would eventually tire of a wife who couldn't give him children, that society would never fully accept a woman like her. But she also wrote about hope that she could build a meaningful life even if it looked different from what she'd been taught to expect. Hope that kindness and respect might be better foundations for marriage than duty and biological function. Working at the school transformed Maya's days. She arrived early, organized files with careful precision, helped teachers with student records, and gradually became an essential part of the school's operations. The children grew accustomed to seeing her, greeting her shyly at first, then with growing familiarity. One afternoon, a little girl named Kavya approached Maya's desk with tears in her eyes. "Auntie, I can't do my mathematics. The numbers are too hard." Maya looked at the girl's slate, covered with erased attempts at simple addition. "Would you like me to show you a different way to think about numbers?" Kavya nodded eagerly. Maya spent the next 20 minutes teaching Kavya to visualize numbers as objects, to break down complex problems into simple parts. When Kavya finally saw the problem independently, her face lit up with joy. "I did it. Auntie, I really did it." Mrs. Sharma, who had been watching from across the room, approached Maya's desk after Kavya skipped away. "You have a gift for teaching," she said. "Have you ever considered working with children directly?" "I'm not trained as a teacher," Maya protested. "Training can be learned. Natural ability is rarer. Would you be interested in helping with mathematics lessons?" That evening, Maya shared the conversation with Arjun, her voice filled with uncertainty and excitement. "Teaching? But I'm not educated enough, not qualified." "You helped Kavya understand something she'd been struggling with," Arjun pointed out. "That's what teaching is, helping minds grow and learn. Your education might be different from mine, but your understanding is real." As months passed, Maya's role at the school expanded. She began assisting with mathematics classes, developing new ways to explain difficult concepts, creating exercises that made learning enjoyable. The children responded to her patient explanations and gentle encouragement. Her relationship with Arjun also deepened, but not in ways she had expected. They became true partners, sharing meals, conversations, books, and dreams. They talked about their work, their pasts, their hopes for the future. Maya began to understand that love could take many forms, that marriage didn't have to follow a prescribed pattern. One evening, as they walked through the city market together, Maya realized that she was happy. Not the desperate, grasping happiness of someone afraid to lose what they have, but a steady, peaceful contentment that came from being valued and useful and free to be herself. "Arjun," she said as they paused to buy vegetables, "I need to tell you something." He looked at her with concern. "What is it?" I think I'm falling in love with you. Not because I have to, not because you saved me, but because of who you are. Because you see me as a complete person." Arjun's smile was gentle and warm. "I've been falling in love with you too. With your curiosity, your kindness with the children, your strength in building a new life. You're nothing like I expected and everything I hoped for." That night, Maya moved her belongings from her separate room into the room she would share with Arjun. It wasn't duty or obligation that led her there, but choice. The choice to build a life based on mutual respect, shared dreams, and the love that grows between two people who see each other clearly and choose to stay together anyway. 6 months into their marriage, Maya's confidence had grown like a flower finally, receiving sunlight. She walked taller, spoke more freely, and had developed genuine friendships with several teachers at the school. But Her past had a way of reaching into her present when she least expected it. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a man from her village who was visiting the city on business. Maya's hands trembled as she recognized her former sister-in-law's handwriting. Maya, Ravi has remarried. His new wife is already pregnant. Kamala wants you to know that her prayers were answered once you left the house. She says your curse has been lifted from their family. They are very happy now. Maya stared at the words until they blurred. Even though she had built a new life, even though she was genuinely happy with Arjun, the letter felt like a knife twisting in an old wound. The message was clear. Her departure had brought blessings to her former family. Her presence had been the problem all along. When Arjun came home that evening, he found Maya sitting motionless at the kitchen table, the letter beside her untouched dinner. Maya, what's happened? She handed him the letter without speaking. He read it carefully, his jaw tightening with each line. This is cruel, he said finally. Intentionally cruel. Why would they send this to you? Because it's true, Maya whispered. I was cursed. My presence brought misfortune to their house. Maya, look at me. Arjun knelt beside her chair. That's superstition, not truth. Ravi's new wife becoming pregnant has nothing to do with you leaving. Fertility isn't magical. It's biological, and sometimes it just doesn't happen. But what if they're right? What if I carry some kind of negativity that affects others? Then, explain the school, Arjun said firmly. Explain how test scores have improved in the mathematics classes you help with. Explain how Kavya went from crying over numbers to leading her study group. Explain how Mrs. Sharma says you've brought fresh energy to our entire program. Maya wanted to believe him, but the letter had awakened all her old fears. The voices in her head that told her she was defective, unlucky, a burden on anyone who cared for her. That night, she lay awake listening to Arjun's steady breathing, fighting the urge to pack her few belongings and disappear before her curse could affect his life too. The next morning, she could barely concentrate at work. During the mathematics lesson she was helping to teach, one of the students asked her a simple question about division, and she found herself staring blankly, unable to form an answer. Auntie Maya, 8-year-old Ravi asked, Are you sick? No, Beta, she managed. Just tired. But Mrs. Sharma noticed her distraction and called her aside during lunch break. Maya, you've been like a different person today. What's troubling you? Maya hesitated, then found herself sharing the contents of the letter. Mrs. Sharma listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious. Maya, I'm going to tell you something that might be difficult to hear. You have a choice to make. Maya braced herself for more bad news. You can choose to believe that you're cursed, that your worth is determined by your ability to bear children, that other people's happiness depends on your absence. Or you can choose to believe what your actions have proven, that you're intelligent, caring, capable, and valuable exactly as you are. But what if the first choice is true? Then, you'll have wasted a life that could have been beautiful. Maya, I've been watching you for months. I've seen how children respond to your patience, how your mathematical insights have helped struggling students, how your quiet strength has inspired other teachers. If you're cursed, it's the most beneficial curse I've ever witnessed. That afternoon, Maya walked home slowly, thinking about Mrs. Sharma's words. As she climbed the stairs to their apartment, she heard voices from inside. Arjun was speaking to someone, and the conversation stopped abruptly when she opened the door. A man she didn't recognize sat at their kitchen table. He was well-dressed, with a confident bearing of someone accustomed to respect and authority. Maya, Arjun said, standing quickly. This is Mr. Gupta. He's from the education department. Mr. Gupta studied Maya with sharp eyes. You're the woman who's been teaching mathematics at the primary school. I assist with mathematics lessons, Maya corrected, unsure why this official had come to their home. Mrs. Sharma speaks very highly of your methods. She says you've developed innovative approaches to help struggling students. Maya glanced at Arjun, confused by the formal tone of the conversation. Mr. Gupta has a proposition, Arjun explained. Tell her what you told me. We're starting a new program, Mr. Gupta said. Training centers for women who want to become teachers but lack formal education. We need instructors who understand both academic subjects and the challenges faced by adult learners. Maya's heart began to race. You want me to teach other women? We want you to help develop and lead the mathematics curriculum for this program. It would mean additional training for you, certification as an instructor, and eventually a teaching position with full benefits. But I'm not qualified. I don't have proper education credentials. You have something more valuable, Mr. Gupta replied. You have the ability to make complex concepts simple and the personal experience of overcoming educational barriers. Mrs. Sharma believes you could be excellent at this work. After Mr. Gupta left, Maya sat in stunned silence. A teaching position, official recognition of her abilities, the chance to help other women gain skills and confidence. It's perfect for you, Arjun said, sitting beside her. You could help women who've been told they're not smart enough or important enough to learn. What if I fail? What if I'm not as good as Mrs. Sharma thinks? What if you succeed? What if you discover abilities you never knew you had? Maya thought about the letter from her former family, about their certainty that her absence had brought them good fortune. Then she thought about Kavya's face when she finally understood fractions, about the other children who sought her help with their mathematics problems, about the possibility of reaching even more students. I want to try, she said finally. I want to accept the position. Arjun's smile was radiant. I'm proud of you. For what? I haven't done anything yet. For choosing to believe in yourself despite years of people telling you that you had no value. For deciding that your future matters more than their opinions. The training program began 3 weeks later. Maya joined a group of 12 women who, like herself, had been deemed unsuitable for traditional paths, but possessed intelligence, determination, and life experience that made them natural teachers. Her fellow trainees came from various backgrounds. Widow women whose families no longer wanted them. Women who had been abandoned by husbands for various reasons. Women who had married late or never married at all. Women who had always been told they were too smart for their own good. During their first session, the program coordinator asked each woman to share why she wanted to teach. When Maya's turn came, she stood slowly and spoke words she had never expected to say aloud. I want to teach because I know what it feels like to be told you're worthless. I know what it's like to believe that your life has no purpose. I want to help other women discover that those voices are wrong, that we all have something valuable to offer. The other women nodded with recognition and understanding. They had all heard those same voices, felt that same sense of worthlessness, struggled with the same doubts. As the weeks passed, Maya threw herself into the training with passionate dedication. She studied teaching methods, child psychology, curriculum development. She practiced lessons with her fellow trainees, refined her techniques, and discovered that she had a natural gift for breaking down complex problems into manageable steps. But more than that, she found her voice. The quiet, apologetic woman who had arrived in the city 6 months earlier was transforming into someone confident, articulate, and genuinely excited about her work. One evening, as she prepared for the next day's practice teaching session, Arjun watched her with amazement. Do you realize how much you've changed? He asked. Maya looked up from her notes. How so? When you first came here, you barely spoke above a whisper. You apologized for everything, even existing. Now you're preparing to stand in front of a classroom and teach other women to believe in themselves. Maya considered this. It was true. She felt like a completely different person than the broken woman who had been sold to escape her family's shame. I think, she said slowly, I'm becoming who I was always meant to be. Before marriage, before the judgments, before I learned to see myself through other people's disappointed eyes. And who is that? Someone who loves learning. Someone who enjoys helping others understand difficult things. Someone who believes that every person has value and potential, regardless of what society tells them. That weekend, Maya received another letter. This time it was from Priya, who had become like a sister to her. Maya, the letter read, I've been accepted to display my paintings in a gallery exhibition next month. They want to feature work by women who have overcome social challenges to build independent lives. I immediately thought of you and your teaching. Would you be willing to speak at the opening about your journey? I think your story could inspire other women. Maya read the letter twice, hardly believing what Priya was asking. Speak publicly about her experience? Share her story with strangers? I don't know if I'm ready for that, she told Arjun. Speaking to children is one thing, but addressing adults about personal matters. What would you tell one of your students who is afraid to try something new? Maya smiled ruefully. I'd tell her that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's feeling afraid and choosing to act anyway. Wise teacher, Arjun said. Perhaps you should take your own advice. The gallery opening was unlike anything Maya had ever experienced. The space was filled with color and light, with people moving from painting to painting, discussing art with sophisticated vocabulary. Priya's work was prominently displayed, and Maya felt tremendous pride in her friend's accomplishment. When it was time for Maya to speak, she stood before the gathered crowd with her heart pounding. She looked out at faces she didn't recognize, people who had no reason to care about her story. 6 months ago, she began, I was sold by my husband's family because I couldn't bear children. I believed that my inability to become pregnant made me a failed woman, a burden on society, someone whose life had no purpose. The room grew quiet, people leaning forward to hear her soft voice. Today, I'm training to become a certified teacher. I work with children and adult women, helping them understand that their worth isn't determined by other people's expectations. I'm married to a man who values my mind and heart more than my biological functions. I have meaningful work, genuine friendships, and hope for the future. Maya paused, looking at Priya, whose eyes were bright with tears of pride. I'm not telling you this story because I want pity or praise. I'm sharing it because I want other women to know that the labels society puts on us don't define our potential. We are not our failures. We are not our limitations. We are not other people's disappointed expectations. We are human beings with minds to use, hearts to share, and lives to live fully. And sometimes the thing that seems like our greatest curse can become the foundation for our greatest strength. The applause was warm and sustained. As people approached her afterward to share their own stories, to thank her for her words, to ask about her work, Maya realized something profound. She was no longer hiding from her story. She was owning it, using it to help others, transforming her pain into purpose. The shame that had once defined her had become a source of strength and connection. That night, as she and Arjun walked home through the city streets, Maya felt a deep sense of completion. Not the completion of having children or fulfilling traditional expectations, but the completion of becoming fully herself. Arjun, she said, do you ever regret marrying a woman who can't give you children? I regret that you still ask that question, he replied gently. Maya, you've given me something more valuable than children. You've given me a partner who understands struggle and chooses joy anyway. A wife who makes me proud every day with her courage and growth and compassion. What if people say we're not a real family without children? Then they don't understand what family means. Family is choosing to care for each other, to support each other's dreams, to build something beautiful together. Biology is just one way to create family. Love is the way that matters most. Maya squeezed his hand, finally beginning to believe that their unconventional love story was not a consolation prize, but a genuine gift. They had found each other not despite their challenges, but because of them. Their shared understanding of loss, judgment, and the courage to rebuild had created something stronger than tradition or expectation. As they climbed the stairs to their home, Maya thought about the women she would begin teaching the following week. Women like herself, who had been told they had nothing to offer, but were ready to discover their own potential. She couldn't wait to help them find their voices, their strength, their own versions of happiness that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. 1 year after beginning her teaching certification, Maya stood before her first official class of adult women learners. 15 women, ranging in age from 20 to 50, sat nervously in the small classroom, some clutching more notebooks, others empty-handed but hopeful. Maya recognized the look in their eyes because she had seen it in her own mirror not long ago. The mixture of desperate hope and deep fear. The uncertainty about whether they were smart enough, worthy enough, capable enough to learn new things. Welcome, Maya said, her voice steady and warm. My name is Maya, and I'm here to teach you mathematics. But before we begin with numbers, I want you to know something about me. She had learned that sharing her story helped other women understand that education was possible for anyone, regardless of their past circumstances. 3 years ago, I was told I was worthless because I couldn't have children. I believed it. I thought my life had no purpose and no future. Today, I'm a certified teacher with my own classroom and students who depend on me. A woman in the back row raised her hand tentatively. Teacher, what changed? How did you go from feeling worthless to becoming educated? I met people who saw my potential instead of my limitations. And slowly I began to see it too. That's what we're going to work on together, seeing your own potential and developing it into real skills. Maya's first student success came from an unlikely source. Lotta was a widow in her 40s who had been forced to leave her village when her husband's family decided she was too expensive to support. She couldn't read numbers beyond 10 and became frustrated quickly when calculations grew complicated. "I'm too old for this," Lotta said after struggling with basic multiplication. "My brain doesn't work like younger women's brains." "Lotta," Maya said, sitting beside her, "can you tell me about managing your household budget when your husband was alive?" "Of course. I knew exactly how much we spent on food, clothes, ceremonies. I could stretch money when times were hard and save when times were good." "That's mathematics," Maya explained. "You were doing complex calculations every day without realizing it. We just need to show you how to write down what your mind already knows how to do." Maya developed new teaching methods based on connecting mathematical concepts to practical experiences her students already possessed. For women who had managed households, she used budgeting examples. For those who had worked in agriculture, she used crop planning and yield calculations. Within 3 months, Lotta was not only keeping up with the class, but helping other students understand difficult concepts. Her confidence bloomed like a flower after rain. "Teacher," she said one day after class, "my daughter wrote from the city asking me to come live with her family. I was so ashamed before, thinking I would be a burden. Now I feel like I could help her children with their studies." Maya's success with her first group of students led to invitations to speak at other training centers, to consult on curriculum development, to mentor new teachers. Her reputation spread throughout the city's education community. But success also brought unexpected challenges. One afternoon, Mrs. Sharma called Maya to her office with a serious expression. "Maya, I need to discuss something sensitive with you. There have been complaints." Maya's stomach dropped. "Complaints about my teaching?" "Not about your teaching. About you personally. Some parents have learned about your background, the fact that you were divorced for being barren, that you were essentially sold to your current husband. They're questioning whether someone with your history is suitable to teach their children." The words hit Maya like physical blows. Just when she had begun to believe her past was truly behind her, it had risen up to threaten her future again. "What kind of complaints?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "They're worried about your influence on their daughters. They think you might encourage girls to be independent instead of focusing on marriage and motherhood. Some have used very harsh language about your moral character." Maya felt the familiar shame crawling up her throat. "Do you want me to resign?" "Absolutely not," Mrs. Sharma said firmly. "I want you to understand what you're facing and help you decide how to respond. You have options." "What options?" "You can ignore the complaints and continue your work, hoping they die down. You can modify your approach to be less threatening to traditional views, or you can address them directly." That evening, Maya shared the conversation with Arjun and Priya, who had come for dinner. Both were outraged on her behalf. "It's exactly what we expected," Priya said angrily. "The moment women like us become successful, people try to tear us down by bringing up our past failures." "What do you think I should do?" Maya asked. "Fight," Arjun said without hesitation. "You've done nothing wrong. Your personal history has no bearing on your professional competence. But what if they succeed in having me removed? What if this ruins everything I've built?" Priya leaned forward intently. "Maya, do you remember what you told me when I was afraid to submit my paintings to the gallery? You said courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and choosing to act anyway." Maya knew her friends were right, but the prospect of public confrontation terrified her. She had spent most of her life trying to avoid attention, to make herself small and invisible. The idea of standing up for herself felt foreign and dangerous. The decision was made for her the next week, when one of the complaining parents confronted her directly outside the school. "Are you the barren woman who's teaching mathematics?" the man demanded loudly enough for other parents to hear. Maya felt every eye in the courtyard turn toward them. Her first instinct was to apologize, to shrink away, to confirm his right to judge her. Instead, she drew herself up to her full height and spoke clearly. "I am Maya Sharma, certified mathematics teacher. If you have concerns about your child's education, I'd be happy to discuss their academic progress with you." "I have concerns about someone with your immoral background influencing innocent children," he replied. Maya felt anger rising in her chest, clean, righteous anger that burned away her shame. "Sir, my personal medical history has no relevance to my professional qualifications. I have been trained by the State Education Department, certified by examination, and employed based on my demonstrated competence. If you have specific concerns about my teaching methods or my interaction with students, I welcome a formal discussion with the principal. Other parents had gathered to listen. Maya saw some nodding approvingly at her professional response, while others seemed uncomfortable with the confrontation. You're an example of everything wrong with modern women, the man continued. Divorced, childless, working instead of serving a proper family. I am an example, Maya replied, her voice growing stronger, of what happens when women are given the opportunity to develop their minds and use their abilities. My students' test scores speak for themselves. Their increased confidence and mathematical skills are my credentials. Mrs. Sharma appeared beside them, having heard the raised voices. Mr. Kumar, if you have complaints about any of our staff members, they should be submitted through proper channels. This is not appropriate. I want to remove from the school, he demanded. That decision will be based on professional performance, not personal prejudice, Mrs. Sharma replied firmly. Now please leave school grounds unless you have legitimate educational business here. As the man left, still grumbling threats, Maya realized she was trembling. But it wasn't the trembling of fear or shame. It was the physical response to standing up for herself publicly for the first time in her life. Maya, Mrs. Sharma said quietly, I'm proud of how you handled that situation. Will there be consequences? Will the education department investigate his complaints? There might be, but your record is exemplary. Your students love you. Their performance has improved dramatically, and you have the full support of this school. Don't let fear make you smaller than you are. That evening, Maya couldn't eat dinner. She paced their small apartment, replaying the confrontation, imagining all the ways it could destroy her career. What if he convinces other parents to remove their children from the school? What if the education department decides I'm too controversial? What if I lose everything? Arjun caught her hands, stopping her nervous movement. Maya, look at me. What if none of those things happen? What if standing up for yourself actually makes you stronger and more respected? You don't understand. I've spent my whole life being told I'm defective, wrong, shameful. Part of me still believes it. Then, let's talk about facts instead of fears, Arjun said gently. Fact, you are an excellent teacher. Fact, your students are learning and thriving. Fact, you have done nothing wrong professionally or personally. Fact, you deserve respect and dignity regardless of your reproductive history. Maya knew he was right intellectually, but emotionally she still felt like the broken woman who had been sold to escape her family's shame. The next morning brought an unexpected development. 3 mothers were waiting outside the school when Maya arrived for work. Her heart sank, expecting more confrontation. Instead, the women approached her with gratitude. Teacher Maya, one said, we heard about yesterday's incident. We wanted you to know that we support you completely. Another mother nodded. My daughter has never enjoyed mathematics before this year. You've made her feel confident about learning. That's what matters to us. The third woman added, some of us know about difficult marriages, about struggles with having children. We don't judge you for things beyond your control. We judge you by how well you teach our children, and you teach beautifully. Maya felt tears threatening. Thank you. You don't know how much this means to me. There are many more parents who feel the same way, the first mother assured her. Don't let a few narrow-minded people make you doubt your value. The support from parents gave Maya courage, but the real test came 2 weeks later when she received an official letter from the education department requesting a meeting to discuss concerns raised about her suitability for teaching positions. Maya sat in the waiting area of the education office, dressed in her most professional sari, clutching a folder containing letters of support from parents, test score improvements from her classes, and recommendation from Mrs. Sharma and other colleagues. When her name was called, she entered an office where 3 officials sat behind a large desk. 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing serious expressions that gave no hint of their attitudes toward her case. Mrs. Maya Sharma, the senior official began, we've received complaints about your employment at the primary school. These complaints question your moral character and suitability to work with children. Maya's throat felt dry, but she managed to speak steadily. I understand there have been complaints. I'd like to address them directly. The complainants suggest that your personal history, specifically being divorced for infertility and entering into an unconventional marriage arrangement, makes you an inappropriate role model for young students. Sir, I would like to respectfully challenge the premise of that complaint, Maya said, opening her folder with trembling hands. The officials looked surprised. They had clearly expected her to be apologetic and defensive, My personal medical history and marriage circumstances have no bearing on my professional competence, Maya continued, finding strength in words she had practiced with Arjun. I am here today, not as a divorced woman or a person with fertility challenges, but as a certified teacher whose students have shown measurable improvement in their academic performance. She handed copies of test score data to each official. These documents show that students in my mathematics classes have improved their performance by an average of 40% over the past year. Parent feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. The female official studied the data with interest. These are impressive results. Ma'am, if I may continue, Maya said, I believe the real question is whether we want to establish a precedent that teachers can be dismissed based on personal circumstances beyond their control rather than on their professional performance. The senior official leaned back in his chair. Explain what you mean. If we accept that a woman's reproductive history disqualifies her from teaching, what other personal factors become grounds for dismissal? Divorce for any reason? Being widowed young? Never marrying? Having only daughters? Where does it end? Maya paused, then continued with growing confidence. I understand that I represent something threatening to traditional expectations. A woman who found purpose and value outside of motherhood. A woman who built a meaningful life despite being labeled as defective. But isn't that exactly the kind of example we want for our students? That every person has potential, regardless of the circumstances they cannot control. The officials exchanged glances. The woman spoke first. Mrs. Sharma, your point about precedent is well taken. We cannot dismiss qualified teachers based on personal circumstances that don't affect their professional performance. The second man nodded. Your academic results speak for themselves. The improvement in student performance is significant. The senior official closed her file. Mrs. Sharma, you will continue in your teaching position. However, I want to make something clear. You're in the public eye now. Your behavior, both personal and professional, will be scrutinized more closely than other teachers. You represent something new and challenging to some people in our community. I understand, sir. I take that responsibility seriously. Good. We expect you to continue the excellent work reflected in these performance reports. As Maya walked out of the education office, she felt as if she were floating. She had defended herself successfully, professionally, and with dignity. She had stood up to official scrutiny and emerged stronger. That evening, Arjun found her sitting quietly in their kitchen, staring out the window with a peaceful expression. How did the meeting go? He asked, though her calm demeanor suggested the answer. I kept my job, she said simply. But more than that, I realized something important. What's that? I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not ashamed of my story or apologetic for my existence. I'm using my experience to help other people, and that transforms everything that happened to me from a curse into a gift. Maya turned to face him, her eyes bright with newfound confidence. I want to do more than just teach mathematics. I want to start a program specifically for women who have been rejected by their families, divorced for reasons beyond their control, or told they have no value. I want to help them discover their potential and build independent lives. Arjun smiled. That sounds like exactly the kind of work you were meant to do. Will you help me plan it? Will you support me in taking on something this ambitious? Maya, I will support you in whatever dreams you want to chase. Watching you transform from a broken woman into a confident teacher and advocate has been the greatest privilege of my life. That night, Maya began writing the proposal that would eventually become the Women's Independence Education Center. She wrote about the untapped potential of women who had been discarded by society, about the need for programs that addressed both practical skills and emotional healing, about her vision of education as a tool for liberation. As she wrote, she thought about all the women like herself who believed their lives were over because they couldn't fulfill traditional expectations. Women who had never been given the chance to discover their own abilities, their own dreams, their own worth. She was no longer just Maya, the barren woman who had been sold to escape her family's shame. She was Maya Sharma, educator, advocate, and living proof that a woman's worth could not be measured by her womb alone. 2 years later, Maya stood at the entrance of the Women's Independence Education Center, watching the morning bustle as her students arrived for classes. The converted building housed 3 classrooms, a library, a counseling room, and a small workshop where women learned practical skills like tailoring and bookkeeping alongside academic subjects. The center had started with Maya's personal savings and a small grant from the city education department. Word spread through women's networks, social workers, and progressive organizations. Soon, women from across the region were traveling to attend programs that combined literacy, mathematics, vocational training, and what Maya called confidence building. Maya's morning began with her advanced mathematics class. Women who had started as complete beginners but now handled complex calculations with ease. Among them was Lada, who had become Maya's assistant teacher and managed the center's accounts with meticulous precision. "Teacher, I have news," Lada announced after class. "My daughter wants me to visit the city permanently. She says her children need someone like me to help with their studies." Maya smiled at the transformation in Lada's voice. The shame and uncertainty had been replaced by quiet pride and genuine confidence. "That's wonderful. Are you ready for such a big change? 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. Now I feel like it's just beginning. My grandchildren will know a grandmother who is educated, independent, and proud of herself." After Lada left, Maya walked through the center, observing the day's activities. In the literacy classroom, women bent over books with intense concentration, many learning to read their own names for the first time. The counseling room hosted a support group where women shared their experiences and encouraged each other through difficult transitions. The center's success had brought both recognition and new challenges. Government officials visited regularly, documenting their methods for potential replication in other cities. Social workers referred women from crisis situations. Local newspapers wrote articles about the innovative approach to women's empowerment. But success also attracted criticism. Conservative groups complained that the center encouraged women to abandon their families and traditional duties. Some religious leaders preached against education for women beyond basic domesticity. Political opponents of the government programs tried to use the center as an example of wasted resources and dangerous social changes. Maya had learned to navigate these criticisms with the same dignity she had shown during her employment hearing. She focused on results: women finding jobs, supporting themselves, reconnecting with children they thought had lost respect for them, building new lives based on their own choices rather than other people's expectations. This particular morning brought an unexpected visitor. Maya was reviewing enrollment applications when her assistant knocked on her office door. "Ma'am, there's a woman here asking to speak with you privately. She seems very upset." Maya looked up to see a young woman in expensive clothes, her face streaked with tears and her hands shaking. She recognized the look immediately, the desperate expression of someone whose world had just collapsed. "Please sit down," Maya said gently, offering the woman a chair and a cup of tea. "What's your name?" "Priya," the woman whispered. "Not your friend Priya. A different Priya. I heard about your center from someone in my neighborhood. Tell me what's brought you here today." Priya's story spilled out in broken sentences. She had been married for 2 years to a wealthy businessman. When she couldn't conceive, her husband's family took her to expensive doctors, fertility specialists, healers. The final diagnosis was devastating. She would never be able to carry a pregnancy to term. "My husband filed for divorce yesterday," Priya said, her voice hollow with shock. "His family says I deceived them by not revealing my defect before marriage. They want me out of the house by the end of the week." Maya felt the familiar anger rise in her chest. Even after all this time, even with her own success, hearing such stories still made her furious at the injustice of it all. "Do you have anywhere to go? Family who will support you?" "My parents arranged this marriage to escape the burden of supporting me. They won't take me back. I have nowhere to go and no way to support myself." Maya leaned forward. "Priya, I need you to listen to me carefully. You're not defective. You are not a burden. You are a woman who has been dealt difficult circumstances, but that does not define your worth or your future." "How can you say that? I failed at the most basic thing women are supposed to do." "Let me tell you something about failure," Maya said, settling back in her chair. 5 years ago, I was in your exact situation. Divorced for being barren, sold to a stranger because my first family wanted to be rid of me. I believed my life was over." Priya looked up with surprise. "You were, like me, exactly like you. And today, I run this center. I teach other women to believe in themselves, and I'm married to a man who values me for who I am, not what my body can or cannot do." Maya spent the next hour sharing her story, explaining the center's programs, and helping Priya understand her options. By the end of their conversation, Priya had stopped crying and was asking practical questions about enrollment, housing, and future possibilities. The residential program lasts 6 months, Maya explained. You'll live here with other women in similar situations, attend classes during the day, and work on building whatever kind of future you want to create. But what if I'm not smart enough? What if I can't learn like other people? Maya smiled. That's what every woman asks when she first arrives. Intelligence isn't about formal education. It's about curiosity, determination, and the willingness to try new things. You've survived a devastating rejection and had the courage to seek help. That tells me everything I need to know about your strength. That afternoon, Maya showed Priya around the center's facilities, introduced her to other students, and helped her complete enrollment paperwork. Watching another woman take the first steps toward rebuilding her life never lost its power to move Maya deeply. As evening approached, Maya walked to the primary school, where she still taught her advanced mathematics classes. The familiar routine of preparing lessons, working with children, and seeing young minds grow and develop continued to bring her joy. During the walk home, she reflected on how much her world had expanded. 5 years ago, her universe had consisted of shame, failure, and the desperate hope for acceptance. Now her days were filled with purpose, connection, and the satisfaction of meaningful work. Arjun was cooking dinner when she arrived, humming contentedly as he prepared their evening meal. Their relationship had continued to evolve in unexpected directions. They had become true partners in every sense, supporting each other's dreams and creating a home based on mutual respect rather than traditional gender roles. "How was your day?" he asked, as he did every evening. Maya told him about Priya, about the new enrollment applications, about the government official who wanted to discuss expanding the center's programs to other cities. "The demand is overwhelming," she said. "Every week, more women arrive desperate for help. I wish we could serve everyone who needs support." "Maybe that's not your job," Arjun suggested. "Maybe your job is to prove that it's possible, to create a model that others can replicate. You think we should focus on training other people to start similar centers? I think you've already proven that women like you can transform their lives and help others do the same. The next step might be multiplying that impact." They spent the evening discussing possibilities, training programs for other educators, consulting with government agencies, writing a handbook based on the center's methods. Maya felt excited by the potential to reach even more women, but also slightly overwhelmed by the scope of what they were contemplating. The next morning brought a phone call that would test everything Maya had learned about confidence and self-advocacy. The caller was a journalist from a national newspaper who wanted to write a feature article about the center. "We've heard remarkable things about your work," the journalist said. "Our readers would be interested in learning about innovative approaches to women's empowerment." Maya agreed to the interview, but as the appointment approached, she felt familiar butterflies in her stomach. Speaking to parents and education officials was one thing. Talking to a journalist whose article would reach thousands of people was another challenge entirely. The journalist, Ms. Anita Varma, arrived with a photographer and a list of probing questions. She was professional but direct, clearly interested in both the success stories and the controversies surrounding the center. "Let's start with your personal background," Ms. Varma said. "You were divorced for being unable to have children. Is that correct?" Maya took a breath, reminding herself that shame only had power if she gave it power. "That's correct. My first marriage ended because I couldn't conceive children. That experience taught me firsthand how society treats women who don't fulfill traditional expectations." "How did you transform that personal trauma into this educational initiative?" "I realized that my experience wasn't unique. Thousands of women face rejection, abandonment, and loss of identity because they can't or don't choose to become mothers. But I also learned that every woman has abilities and potential that go beyond reproductive function." The interview continued for 2 hours, covering everything from funding challenges to future expansion plans. Ms. Varma asked difficult questions about criticism from conservative groups, about the sustainability of the programs, about whether Maya's approach was creating unrealistic expectations for traditional women. Maya answered each question honestly, acknowledging challenges while defending the fundamental principle that every woman deserved the opportunity to develop her potential. "What would you say to critics who argue that centers like yours are breaking up families and encouraging women to abandon their duties?" Ms. Varma asked. "I would say that strong, educated, confident women actually strengthen families and communities," Maya replied. When women have skills and self-respect, they make better partners, better mothers when they choose to become mothers, and better contributors to society. And to women who are facing situations similar to what you experienced. Maya paused, thinking of Priya and all the other women who had walked through the center's doors carrying shame and despair. I would tell them that their value as human beings is not determined by their reproductive capacity. I would tell them that they have a right to dignity, education, and the chance to create meaningful lives. And I would tell them that they are not alone. The article was published 3 weeks later with the headline, From Shame to Strength: How One Woman's Pain Became Purpose. The piece was generally positive, highlighting the center's success stories and Maya's thoughtful approach to addressing social challenges. But the publication also brought intense scrutiny. Letters to the editor ranged from supportive to viciously critical. Some readers praised Maya's courage and the center's work. Others condemned her as a destructive influence on traditional values. More importantly, the article brought national attention to the center. Requests for information poured in from social workers, government agencies, women's organizations, and individuals across the country. The phone rang constantly with inquiries about starting similar programs, visiting the center, or enrolling in their courses. Maya realized they had reached a turning point. The center was no longer a local experiment, but a model with national implications. The responsibility felt enormous, but so did the opportunity to create lasting change. 6 months after the article's publication, Maya stood before an audience of 300 people at a national conference on women's education. Government ministers, social activists, academics, and journalists had gathered to discuss policy recommendations for supporting women in crisis situations. As the keynote speaker, Maya had been asked to share both her personal story and the lessons learned from running the center. Looking out at the sea of faces, she felt a moment of disbelief. 5 years ago, she had been a broken woman hiding in shame. Today, she was addressing national leaders about social policy. I stand before you today not as an exceptional person, but as an example of what becomes possible when society invests in women's potential rather than limiting their opportunities, Maya began. She spoke about the thousands of women who had passed through the center's programs, about the ripple effects of education and empowerment, about the economic and social benefits of supporting women in crisis rather than abandoning them. Every woman who learns to read, she said, becomes someone who can help her children with homework. Every woman who develops job skills becomes someone who can contribute to her family's economic security. Every woman who builds confidence becomes someone who can advocate for herself and others. We're not trying to destroy traditional families or traditional values. We are trying to ensure that tradition includes room for every woman to develop her full potential, regardless of the circumstances that shape her life. The applause was sustained and heartfelt. During the question period that followed, Maya fielded inquiries about funding, curriculum development, training programs, and policy recommendations with the expertise of someone who had lived every aspect of the work she was describing. After the conference, Maya was approached by representatives from international development organizations interested in supporting similar programs in other countries. The idea that her local center could become a model for global efforts seemed almost surreal. That evening, she called Arjun from her hotel room to share the day's events. I never imagined when we started this work that it would grow into something so significant, she told him. I'm proud of you, he said, but I'm not surprised. You've always had the ability to see possibilities that others miss. Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life. Sometimes I still feel like that broken woman who was sold to escape her family shame. Good, Arjun replied. Don't forget her completely. She's the reason you understand what other women are experiencing. She's the source of your compassion and determination. Maya realized he was right. Her past pain had become her greatest strength, not because she had overcome it completely, but because she had learned to transform it into purpose. The next morning brought a message that completed the circle of Maya's transformation. A letter had arrived at the center from her former sister-in-law, Kamala. Maya, the letter read, I am writing to ask for your help. Robbie's second wife has also been unable to conceive children. The family is talking about divorcing her as well. I remember you now with regret for how we treated you. Could you help this woman find a place at your center? I have heard about your success, and I am ashamed of how we failed to see your value. Maya stared at the letter for a long time, feeling a complex mixture of